Hey, Being at Work listeners, this is your host, Andrea Butcher. Welcome back to another guest episode. I am so excited about this conversation today, not only because I love today's guest, she's become a dear friend, but I also so appreciate her message around personal responsibility. It is something so near and dear to my executive coaching heart. You know, as Maya Angelou famously said, do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. And as you'll hear across the stories that today's guest shares, there is such a clear theme of looking in the mirror and doing something with what you see, not blaming, not deflecting, but taking responsibility. Amy Graves is the Chief Human Resource Officer at Bell Technologies. But what you really need to know about Amy is how she's learned the importance of advocating for herself and trusting herself, which are both an important part of continual self-awareness and being intentional about doing something when life puts a mirror up to your face. Check it out.
You know, this is one of those things when somebody asks me this, I have to say to myself, do I want to keep my full-on professional hat on and, not share some of that story, which doesn't feel professional, or do I just share my truth? And the truth is, no one really talked to me about college. My parents were working parents. They owned a business. So I just assumed I would kind of work for the family business or do something. I don't know. I never really thought about the future as a young person, which is all we talk about to young people now. I ended up getting pregnant at a young age, had my daughter at 19. All of a sudden, I was responsible for this other human life. And all of a sudden, what I was going to do with my future mattered. And it mattered pretty fast after that. So I quickly just shifted focus and enrolled in college and started, getting a little more serious about what I wanted to do with my life. And from there, I really fell into my very first HR job at the NCAA. I was a young single mom going to school full time to earn my degree and work full time at the NCAA. I learned a ton. I had great mentorship, and really from there, my career blossomed. And as I continued my education and continued learning, and quite frankly, made some mistakes, along the way, because isn't that where the learning really happens, right? So, yeah, I mean, ended up getting my bachelor's degree. After that, I went on and got my master's degree, and my career just continued to flourish. So I've been working in human resources for about 25 years. And now I'm like you said, the CHRO of Bell Technologies, and I love my job. I love what I do. And I'm happy to share my story.
Well, I'm so glad you're sharing your story. And I know through that journey that you just highlighted for us, I know you've had lots of learnings and lots of pivotal kinds of moments that have taught you a lot. But there's a couple in particular that you were sharing with me recently that really hit on this theme of self-awareness. And I know one of those was early. Was it in the job at the NCAA?
Yeah, it was. I was probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years into my position there. So I got young, eager, but also, sometimes a little bit of ego, right? Don't we know everything in our early 20s? And I remember this interaction. I couldn't even tell you what it was about, but it was a disagreement on how something should have been handled. And I remember very vividly one of my colleagues, coworkers in the HR department saying to me, Amy, when you say that, you just sound so positive. And I knew, based on the context of our conversation, that she did not mean I was being positive. She meant that as not a positive thing. So I asked her, what do you mean by that? And she said, it seems like when anybody has an opinion that's different than yours, it's not important or not valued, and your opinion is the only one that matters. And man, that's crushing. It was eye-opening and definitely hurtful to hear that, but not hurtful in a way like I didn't believe it, hurtful in a way that I was thankfully I had enough, I think, emotional intelligence to check myself. And I really went home and asked myself for weeks on end. I was evaluating this conversation and trying to understand what kind of behaviors I was exhibiting that made her feel that way. And, you know, certainly it wasn't my intention, but, conversations and communication are not just about intention. It's how is that person on the other end receiving your message? And I knew that I did not want to be known as the person that was communicating in that way. I've always viewed myself as a very open communicator, open person. I love hearing other people's ideas. I am passionate. I do feel convicted on some things, right? So and clearly that was coming across in a way that I didn't intend. And I'm telling you, that interaction was 25 years ago, and it's still a guiding force for me. It has taught me, and I never will forget it, taught me that it's not just about intention. It is also about how that message is received, and also just mindfulness about how we share something and communicate. What do I want the end result to be? Am I just trying to prove a point? And I've just tried very hard over the years to be a mindful communicator. One of my pet peeves is when somebody says something kind of maybe, nasty or not very kind, and then they'll say, well, I'm just being direct. That just gets under my skin so much. It's like, being direct is not your excuse for being a jerk, right? And that's how she was viewing me in that moment. She was saying, Amy, you're so direct, meaning how you said that to me was kind of jerky, right? And that was definitely not my intention. So I've worked really hard to like counteract that, that perception that, sometimes, yes, I can be direct and bold and passionate. But there's a way to be all those things without being jerky, and I just never want to be that way with people.
Yeah, what an important reminder that you can't use who you are as an excuse. And I hear so much openness from you in that situation. Because I think about my early 20s, and you talked about some of the ego that you were walking around with. And I don't know, I think I might have thought, oh, that's her problem. She's perceiving it that way. What do you attribute your openness to?
Well, to be fair, maybe at 21 when that happened to me, I don't remember exactly what I was thinking in that moment. I probably was thinking, oh, that's definitely her, not me. So I knew, because it kept sticking with me, that there was something like a lesson there I was supposed to be learning. So I've always gone back to that. I think that I've always been a fairly self-aware person and open to feedback. I'm a feeler, I think, just by nature. So I think a lot of that's just been probably a little bit of just kind of who I am, like, inside.
Yeah. Well, and I love the point about it stuck with you, so you knew there was something there. There was a message for you in that feedback.
Yeah, because if there wasn't, I wouldn't have continued to think about it year over year over year. And as I got older, the learning from that experience became way more valuable, right? Because clearly I'm in HR, so I'm having conversations with people all the time they can be difficult, they can be challenging, they can be, two different opinions. It can be, maybe I'm having a performance conversation. Maybe I'm having a difficult conversation about a business decision and how it impacts people. So I'm often having conversations that are not super comfortable. And so I think that it was just this really tiny seed that was planted early on in my career that I just continued to pay attention to, learn from, look in the mirror. Amy, how are you communicating? What message are you sending? What message are you sending, even if you're not intending to send it, just based on body language? I talk with my hands, like I pitch everything, right? There's so many factors that there's nothing about me that's monotone. So, and I'm a terrible actress too. So what I feel is going to come out, but there's a maturity with like managing how that comes out. And I think that I just had to develop that over time.
Absolutely. And so that feedback was really pivotal for you because it's stuck, and it's still there today, helping to guide how you do what you do. Wow, what an important leadership reminder. Like paying attention to the feedback and paying attention to those things that really stick with you. Like, okay, what's the message in this for me? How can I leverage this to be better?
And then it becomes easier to teach others that because you don't even really have to say a lot about doing it. You just have to do it and live it. And then other people that, you're working with or for you or whatever, kind of pick up on some of those things and habits, just like I did too. Right? And I still do. I mean, I'm learning every day. So I notice how people interact with others. I notice how they handle conversations, or especially ones that involve conflict or mistakes, or, and that's where the learning is. When I really think about where most of my learning has been throughout my 25 years in HR, it has been because of a mistake I made, because of discomfort, right? Because of maybe some conflict. Those are really the experiences that lead to, some sort of a learning or education or a change in behavior. I couldn't name a ton of situations where things went great and I had a pick learning,
Exactly. It's such a good point, which is why it's so important to press into those moments of challenge and tension, because we want to be comfortable. So often we'll like, oh, just pretend like it's okay, or we'll deny it. We'll just like turn a blind eye. We'll reframe it. I know I've fallen into the reframing trap a lot rather than really diving in to the shit, because that's where the goods are, in the messy middle.
That's right. Yep. I completely agree.
Yeah, your story highlights that. And you did. Like you jumped into the messy middle.
Yep. I had plenty of messy middle. Well, we all have, right? Some of us want to acknowledge them, some of us don't. Again, if there's growth, that you're acknowledging it and recognizing it.
It's the stuff of life, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so then fast forward a few years, and I know a different leadership lesson, but still one that really gets at awareness.
Yeah. So again, there's so many, but I'm picking the examples that stick out to me that I continuously go back to when I'm thinking about, my own growth. And one of those experiences was, it was probably like 10 years ago. And this is really about, talk about like looking in the mirror, self-awareness, advocating for yourself. I mean, I was in a position that I loved. I was doing great work. I had a really great boss, great mentorship, and particularly great female mentorship. My boss was a female. My COO was a female. We had a women's leadership group that we spent a lot of quality time together. And I just, had a lot of like professional growth in those, those are pivotal years in my career. And one of the things that happened in those years was I really felt like I was deserving of a promotion. I wasn't asking for it, I really wasn't even talking about it, to be honest, because in my mind, I felt like, well, she'll come to me